What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for coming back as always. And yeah, how do I sum up this week in one short video? It's just been absolutely incredible. It's been like 9 days since I've even been at work, and now I'm gearing up, getting ready to go back there. And I don't really want to get back out on the water. Fishing's really good right now. Things are a little beat up after this big tournament, but there's still plenty of fish around. It's a lot of fun being out there on the water right now. So just to recap a little bit of what's been going on, obviously wrapped up the Bass Nation qualifying tournament out of La Crosse, Wisconsin. Finished up in second place with a whopping 59 pounds 6 ounces for 3 days, 15 bass. I weighed all smallmouth for that total. Pretty proud of it. Almost a 4-pound average for 3 days. It's pretty hard to beat on the river, but this week another competitor just had him absolutely found. Just a little bit better than me, quite a bit better than me actually. He had 65 pounds and some ounces. Just an absolute blowout. Unbelievable finish for him. But I'm not going to take away from the finish that I had. I want to talk a little bit about my strategy, baits that I used, and the way I was able to put that many big fish in the boat this week, because I couldn't have done it without some of the great products I'm using, and obviously a lot of local knowledge helps a great deal there. But overall, when I went into this tournament, I had a couple ideas in mind. The biggest thing is I knew that the smallmouth were really on the cusp of spawning, and that became apparent pretty early on in practice. But I really wanted to check some largemouth stuff, because I thought, you know, in a typical spawning smallmouth scenario, it's usually good for a day or two, and then everything's pretty picked off, and it's hard to go the distance with 15 smallmouth in any of these major multi-day tournaments. So my whole goal was to spend the first day or two of practice finding some big largemouth that weren't spawning, that were staged up in current, where I could rifle up 16 to 18 pounds of largemouth really fast on a jig, square bill crankbait, stuff like that. Moving baits, power fishing, catch a big bag of largemouth to kick off the tournament if I needed to. It became pretty apparent that the largemouth were in a very awkward in-between stage, where there weren't really a lot of fish spawning, other than I found a lot of bucks on beds, but not a lot of big ones. Not a lot of big ones on beds, but there weren't any big ones on the staging stuff either. They're in like a weird in-between phase, where the big ones I think were probably in the spawning areas, and they weren't locked on beds yet. That made them really tough to target with any kind of consistency this week. Now flip over to, you know, I went and spent a little bit of time on the first day of practice just checking some spawning smallmouth stuff. Caught a couple 3.5 to 3 3/4 pounders, and that kind of turned my wheels, and I said, you know, I think this might be like a full-blown smallmouth spawning tournament. So day 2 of practice, I went out specifically only to target spawning smallmouth. I wanted to find as many areas where the smallmouth were spawning as I possibly could, and I ended up having the best day of my practice on that day, on Sunday. Actually the best 5 fish limit I've ever personally caught on my own. I caught 22.79 pounds. Previously my best 5 was 22.35 on the river, so shattered that. Caught a bunch of big ones, and they were all, you know, getting ready to spawn. They were kind of right there, you know what I'm saying? So I felt pretty good about that, and I spent the rest of my entire practice just trying to identify as many fish on beds as I possibly could. I pretty much abandoned the largemouth and went all in. I'm going to find as many smallmouth as I can, and I was able to identify about 40 fish, and they were all pretty big, you know, in practice, that I could probably go back and catch in the tournament. The way I would find these fish is I would take my time going meticulously up the bank, pitching at every single inch, and then I would get a strike, and I would make sure I knew exactly where that strike was. You know, typically when these smallmouth take your bait off a bed, you're just going to see the line kind of ease off. So I'd wait to see that line ease off, and as soon as the line started moving, I did 2 things. I'd troll right to it. I'd drop a waypoint right where I think the fish came from. Second, I would look at my electronics to try to determine the size of that fish. Most of the time you could tell the difference between a 2-pounder and a 4-pounder. So any fish that looked like it was pretty big, I was checking up, letting them, you know, shaking them off, and then I would go back in there. You know, I kind of had an idea in my mind where my best 5 fish based on what I saw in my electronics were, and I was able to go back and catch those fish pretty quickly on day 1 of the tournament. So day 1 I opened up with 21.9. Day 2 was a lot tougher day. You know, I expected to spend 2 days out of my primary area, but after day 1, seeing how many other competitors were in there and they were fishing properly, I was not very confident that any of the fish that I was saving would be left for me. So I abandoned that area, and on day 2 I went and fished all new stuff. Managed to catch 3 fish over 4 pounds, just fishing, looking for new fish, and that ended up being a big time player for my tournament. Weighed 20 pounds 6 ounces on that second day, and then I was able to go back out on the final day, and you know, I stayed close to home. I didn't lock or do anything crazy. I knew if I could maximize my time fishing, I'd have my best shot to catch another big bag. And you know, I was really relying on the leader struggling and hopefully bringing in only like 12 pounds on the final day, and that I knew that was really my only chance to win, was if he struggled and I caught another consistent bag. That didn't happen. He caught the biggest bag of day 3, also weighed 19.4, so he shut the door. But overall, I was very happy with my performance. I was able to hang on to second place, weighed 17.7 on the final day to finish up in second. Took second by a couple pounds too. So, you know, there was really nothing I could do wrong this week. I just got outperformed in every facet, but I performed at a very high level, and I'm really proud of that. So I just want to walk you through a couple of the things that were really key in my second place finish in my national championship qualifying tournament. I'll be going to Grand Lake in November thanks to this finish, so I'm pretty excited about that too. But big thing, right before the tournament started, I got a shipment of Lew's rods and reels. I got you know, I really want to get some of the custom light spinning reels, but they are currently out of stock. So I managed to get my hands on another Hyper Mag, which has been a great reel for me. I got 2 of them. Really like the Hyper Mag reel. We'll wait for another day to get that custom light that's being so heavily raved about right now. But I also paired that up on this custom light long range spinning rod. It's a 7'6" medium extra fast. So this is a really good rod for throwing lightweight baits, you know, throwing a hair jig, throwing Ned rigs, anything that's small that you want to be able to make long casts with. But it's not only just about long casts. I can also make very precise casts with this bait, or with this rod. I really love using it. It's got a great action, great tip, and I was able to manhandle a lot of big ones. Some of them out of some fairly heavy cover for a spinning rod. So talking about the bait a little bit, I use just a little bit of Ned rig head. I like the chartreuse head when they're spawning, and then I put a Rage Menace, Strike King Rage Menace on there. This is a Falcon Lake Craw color. It's got a little bit of gold and red fleck in it, green pumpkin with a little muted red color on the belly. Absolutely killer color, absolutely killer bait for when the smallmouth are spawning. I'm just pitching that up there around areas where I'm reading, you know, breaks in the current, places where I think a smallmouth might be able to spawn. And then I'm just letting it get down to the bottom, and I'm just kind of keeping the line tight and just moving it along at an absolute crawl. You know, you barely want to move this bait, shaking the rod tip a little bit, just put some action into it, and just waiting for that line to get tight and swim off. That was a big key for finding the fish, and a big key for catching them in the tournament as well. Second rod choice, rod and reel combo choice that I've been using is this Mark Zona Lew's Signature Series rod. It's the light jig and Ocho rod. It's a 7.3 medium heavy. Absolutely killer rod for throwing lightweight Texas rigs and small jigs. Love this rod so far. Just got my hands on it this week, and I boat flipped some pretty big fish on this rod. Pretty happy with it overall. Rigging that up with 17-pound tour grade fluorocarbon. It's absolutely good stuff. And I got a custom light shallow spool reel on here. Left-handed. I am ambidextrous with my rods and reels. I like using lefty reels for flipping and pitching Texas rigs around. I just feel like I'm a lot more efficient that way. I don't have to switch hands, and I get a pretty good hook set with my right hand versus my left. So super dialed setup. Like I said, that 17-pound Strike King tour grade fluorocarbon has been dialed for me all week, and I'm putting on that a Strike King Rage Bug. It's this green pumpkin with a purple swirl. Super awesome color. I mean, anything with a little purple hue to it, it's absolute killer on the river. And I really like that Rage Bug because it's got a little action in the tails. You know, anytime when the fish are on beds, They like stuff going like this in front of their face. I should say they hate it. They hate it in the way that we bass fishermen love. We love it when those fish hate our baits coming across their face. So, you know, that menace grub was great for finding fish, and also like when the fish was, you know, kind of easy to catch, they would bite that thing like instantly on the first throw. But there were certain fish that were really tricky and hard to catch, and that's when I pull out this Texas rig. And what you kind of do is you get up there and you get over the bed and you're making short flips. You know, I'm keeping my boat only 20 to 25 feet away from these fish. I'm making short pitches at the fish and just getting in there, coming across the bed, reeling in. Getting in there, come across the bed, reel in. You do that repetitively as fast as you can. And ideally, if you can try to bump the fish, that's all the better. If you can bump them in the head, bump them in the tail, get that fish to react, get that fish to spin around, you know, that's how you get them fired up with a Texas rig bait like this, something that you can get in and out quick, get that fish annoyed, frustrated, and then ideally, now this is a super sneaky trick. If you've paid attention to this whole video, you've earned this little nugget right here. So what I'm going to try to do is position on that fish, get to a point where that fish is looking at my bait, he's observing that bait in the bed, he might be slightly nose down on it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a good pop, just a sharp little snap. You don't want to jerk it too much because it'll pull the bait right out of the bed, but if I can just pop it up in the air, a real sharp little snap, get it to jump 3 to 6 inches off the bottom. And what I'm doing then is I'm looking to set the hook almost immediately after making that sharp pop. Because what happens is you pop that bait, the fish is looking at your bait, just he doesn't have any intentions of eating it, he's just watching it. Most likely you're not on the eggs at that time, you know, he's making sure you're not getting too close, but he's watching it, and as soon as you pop it up into its face, he just reacts. They can't help themselves. They open their mouth, suck it in very briefly, and they'll spit it right back out most of the time. But if you can do it just right, pop it up, and you feel that little tick, you set the hook. It's basically a pop, tick, poof, set the hook, and you got that fish. That was a really productive method to get some of the fish that were extra hard to catch. You know, a lot of these fish, they've been caught multiple times throughout practice, and every time they get caught, they get a little bit smarter, they get a little bit more aware of their surroundings, harder to catch. So those hard ones, you know, hitting them in the head with the rage bug on the Texas rig was a big deal for those tough to catch fish, and those were usually the better than average size too. So overall, couldn't be happier with my products that I'm using to catch these fish. Couldn't be happier with my performance in the tournament. Went back out on Sunday in a Bites 95 tournament, and we revisited some stuff that I fished on day 1 of that tournament but then abandoned, and it was apparent that some new fish had moved up, and we ended up catching them pretty good. You know, we ended up with 18.80, a little more than that. I can't remember the exact decimals, but it was 1880 something. Took second place in the Bites 95 tournament, so we're off to a really good start on the team series as well this year. Basically, it's just been an absolutely killer year. I've had 3 wins and 2 seconds to start the year, and we're not trying to slow down anytime soon. I got the BFL coming up. Took the day off today to get the boat dialed back in. We're going to clean it up here in a minute, vacuum out the live wells, get all the crap out of there, and then it's go time again tomorrow. We're going to be back out there practicing. Got a big BFL on Saturday this week, so we gotta go out there, and you know, I'm really expecting that some of the smallmouth are going to start tailing off a little bit here. I don't think this tournament's going to be strictly dominated by smallmouth. I think the largemouth are going to, you're going to see a big largemouth resurgence here as they start to really get into prime spawn, and maybe even some pre-spawn fish still hanging around out there. So I'm looking to weigh a big bag of largemouth this week, and we're going to try to get it done with our Strike King Loose products. Super excited about it, so make sure you tune back in. I'll have more reports and videos coming very soon. So thanks for watching. See you next time. K. Laufenberg Fishing, keep it here.